What's up, everybody? Welcome in. We've got an awesome special guest here, John Kurtz, host of the Three Mile podcast alongside Cole Manbeck and Derek Young. He also does a great job of covering the Big 12 and everything going on with conference alignment. There's been some massive stories recently on John's channel. If you haven't checked out any of his content, I'll put the links in the description for you guys to check out. But John, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, anytime. I appreciate it, Joe.
No problem. So I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask immediately. The elephant in the room. Colorado to join the Big 12 in 2024. What are your initial thoughts or impressions on the move?
Well, I think it's been a long time coming. There was a period there in May where it seemed like it was getting really hot and heavy and everybody kind of expected that to pop, and it didn't. And it seemed like they did a lot of the legwork then, got pretty close, tried to give Kliavkoff a little bit more of a chance, and now obviously they're back. I mean, to me, it's so much more about just the domino effect that could occur because of it and the symbolism of it, just being a big win for the Big 12, this league that's been picked at over and over again. 6 teams have left throughout the history of the conference, and you finally went and took somebody else from a Power 5 conference. That is a significant win. Brett Yormark being able to change the narrative on this league as much as he did in a year to get you to the point where you could sell Colorado on that. The first school, by the way, to leave in that last round of conference realignment to go to the Pac-12. I think that is very significant. But the other part, obviously, is what it does to put pressure on Arizona, who's now where a lot of the realignment world is looking at right now to see what they are going to do. And it sounds like that's coming up on Tuesday. It's going to be a really big day to look and see what the numbers are going to be that George Kliavkoff actually presents. Does not seem like there's a lot of hope on the Arizona side. If anybody out there follows Jason Scheer on Twitter, great follow right now, who's really plugged in on everything going on with Arizona and realignment, he is certainly not optimistic that Kliavkoff is going to be able to save the day there. So then maybe that opens the door then to Arizona State and Utah as well. Maybe it's going to be Oregon and Washington. There are a lot of scenarios that could follow out there, but basically it just put a ton of pressure on Kliavkoff. I mean, the general narrative right now is that this meeting that's been called where he's going to meet with Arizona is basically them forcing his hand, saying like, hey, you've been saying a deal's coming. We haven't seen actual tangible numbers. You better show us something or we're leaving, because the Big 12 is now pressuring us to get this seat on the lifeboat. And that happens because Colorado actually leaves. Like, that move really started to apply a lot more pressure to what's going on over there. So that's really what this Colorado move is about. I would not get too hung up on, they've been a dreadful football program. They've been a mediocre basketball program. I get it. They do bring a really nice market in Denver. They obviously have Big 12 DNA, and they have Dion. So there are some pluses there, but I get it. On the surface, it does not look like some powerhouse program that you're adding, but I think you have to look a lot deeper than just on the surface with that one.
For sure. And now, I don't mean to put you too much on the spot here, and you kind of answered it in that last question, but if you had to place a bet right now, would you put all your eggs in the Arizona basket? Would that be your first next team, I guess, after Colorado to move and make that jump to a different conference, specifically the Big 12?
I do think that they're coming. It seems pretty likely. And again, I'm basing a lot of this on the guys like Jason Scheer. I mean, 365 Sports, another great follow in the YouTube world. If you want to go check out the content those guys are producing, if you just kind of read the tea leaves on people who are really plugged in, it seems like that is the most likely scenario. Arizona, I think, has been a little more diplomatic about it and trying to be fair and give Kliavkoff a chance. They've certainly been more receptive than Arizona State and Utah, for a variety of different reasons. But yeah, I would guess, if I were a betting man, I would say that you're probably going to get Arizona in the Big 12. I think where it gets tougher is beyond that, because beyond that, now we're talking about 2 schools in Arizona State and Utah that did not, I mean, they've really been dragging their feet on this. I don't think Utah wants to be seen as like following BYU into a league. There's a rivalry and some pride as far as that goes. Arizona State, to be honest, has just dreadful leadership. Leadership that, by the way, really enabled Larry Scott, who's a big part of the reason the Pac-12 is in this mess. So they're just kind of, to me, a rudderless ship right now in a program that should be doing way more than what they actually are. You'd still love to have them, but I'm just not convinced that they're going to do what is probably what's in their best interest here in this scenario. And then Oregon and Washington, I mean, maybe some Big Ten flirtation in the mix now that Colorado's already left and the Pac-12 is already starting to bleed. There's also the theory that they would prefer to just stay in the Pac-12 and have an easier path to the playoff and take whatever money you can get. Phil Knight can subsidize some of that for Oregon. So I don't know. It seems still fairly unlikely that happens to the Big 12, but I do think there's at least a possibility of it. So that's kind of the scenario right now. But I think Arizona, that domino is going to fall. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you for sure. I think Arizona is probably the most logical to go next. But pivoting over to some K-State stuff. Now, down at Big 12 Media Days, we're fresh off of it. You guys put out a ton of content. There was a ton of great interviews on the channel. You had all the players, coaches, and different Big 12 officials on the show, as well as media personalities. There was a ton of great stuff. Out of all the content, out of everything you guys did, all the interviews, what would you say was your biggest takeaway? I know that's kind of a cliche to ask, but I'd say, what did you take away from that? Say, you know what, this is what I wanted to hear.
Good question. I think, my biggest takeaway overall is that Tim Weiser was ready to get some stuff off his chest, but which is part K-State related and part Big 12 related. Obviously, he had the comments about Texas and Oklahoma that really kind of went viral and created a lot of hubbub in Texas circles in particular. Outside of that, I think there were a couple names that we heard over and over again. I would just say, it seems like a pretty confident group. I think, to me, it's just that there's a lot of respect for K-State around there that was new for me to experience. It's as high as K-State has been picked in the preseason Big 12 poll since 2004, which of course was coming off the 2003 Big 12 championship season. And you could just see some of that respect reflected in how everybody is handling and treating this team there right now. Will Howard was joking about somebody coming up to him and saying, like, the champs are here when he was starting to walk down the hall, and just the amount of attention that they garnered, like a lot more attention, people wanting to talk to those guys. And there have been years, that I've been down there where K-State's just kind of a middling team. And especially like late in the Bill Snyder era, there just wasn't much juice or excitement to the program, even if they were winning like 7 games a year. So I think that's really changed. You can just see how the perception of the program has changed quite a bit by what is happening there. Like Austin Romaine, I'm pretty sure I'm getting that name right. Linebacker. He was a name that we heard quite a bit, which was a real surprise. One of the lower ranked guys in the recruiting class. It seems to be making a pretty big impact right now. If you're looking for like just a name for K-State that seems to really stand out. I think they're trying to push. It seems like they really want to push DJ Giddens, which is probably, the guy had a really nice year last year and looked very good as the number 2 running back to Deuce Vaughn. But also I think the fact that Trayshawn Ward picked up the Newcomer of the Year award in the Big 12, and they want to make sure that they're taking care of their guy who's been there grinding in the program for a long time already in DJ Giddens. So, I have like some little things there, but the overarching thing to me is like this is a very confident group that is very much gained the respect of the rest of the league.
For sure. Now, before I do flip over and talk about basketball, I've got one more football specific question. Now, it's kind of tough to define where the ceiling is for this K-State team. There's people like, I read an article a couple weeks ago where they had the Wildcats as one of the 4 college football playoff members going up against Alabama in a rematch. And then I've also seen things where it's okay, you're going to finish 2nd, 3rd, 4th in the Big 12. What would you say your expectations are for this season? I know they should be elevated, but I'd love to hear what you think about for expectations for the season, postseason, whatever goes into that.
I think what I'd really like to see is an expectation here is like a 9-win season. I'm not somebody that's going to say like it has to be Big 12 championship or bust again. That would be great. But what I want to see is that you can prove that 2 years in a row you have a better than, the kind of 7-5-ish sort of year. And that's probably not totally fair because Kleiman, outside of the COVID year, he's won at least 8 games every single year if you're taking the totality of the season. But I would like to see 2 straight years where they're like legitimately competing for the Big 12 championship game, going down to the wire of it and proving that like, hey, this is not going to fall off. That was not a one-time deal. I don't think it has to be getting even all the way to Arlington or winning the title, but legitimately live up to some of the hype here and be a team that's going to be in contention for it. That's really what I would like to see. I think they definitely have a chance. To me, the storyline of the season is you've got a better depth of talent overall on this roster than they've had in a long time. I think that much is very, very true. Even if you look back at recruiting rankings, they've been steadily getting better. I just think they have a lot more talent in general on the roster. But do you have stars? That is the question, because you lost so much star power last year in Deuce and Felix and Julius Brents. Do you have guys that can step in and be those dudes? Is Will Howard ready to take the next step? And really, maybe it's fair to just say, can he be the same guy that he was last year, but with no Malik Knowles, no Deuce Vaughn? And Malik is probably a guy I should have mentioned in the star power sentence a little bit earlier too. That's the question, because Will was elite. Cole Manbeck, just go follow Cole Manbeck's Twitter account. He's chronicled a lot of that. Like just the offensive efficiency, they were top 5 in the country. If you would have extrapolated it out for an entire year when Will Howard was playing quarterback, they were top 5 in the country. And in points per drive, which is a crazy stat and something you would never have expected to see with the K-State offense. So can Will elevate his play enough when it's now Keegan Johnson and Trayshawn Ward as opposed to Deuce Vaughn and Malik Knowles? And then on defense, like, is Khalid Duke ready to become Felix Anudike-Uzomah? I think he has the potential to, but they're going to really, that is one concern for me, is what's going to happen on the line and actually being able to get pressure on guys. I think D-tackle, maybe some question marks there too, certainly at least from a depth standpoint. So that's really basically it. Can you replace some of the star power that you lost all across the board last year? I think K-State is well positioned to do that, as they have in a long time, but I would expect at least a bit of a step back, which is why, to me, I'm kind of in that like 9-win range as opposed to 10 wins and winning the Big 12 championship.
Gotcha. I do want to give a shout out to Cole Manbeck while we're on the topic. I don't know if it's 100% what this exactly was happening. The guy watched just about every single down of K-State football and has been breaking it down on Twitter across explosive plays and different types of things going on. If you have any questions about any type of the team, for anybody listening, go ahead and just follow Cole on Twitter. Go look through what he's been doing. He's got some awesome stuff out there. And if you just need a little bit of that, I need some football to get through the next month, Cole's got some stuff for you for sure to check out on that front. But I do want to pivot towards the basketball side a little bit. And we are farther away from this season than football season, obviously. And a lot of the hype's been on football lately. This K-State team did a great job. They brought in 2 huge transfer portal players in both Tyler Perry, Arthur Kaluma. And there's been a lot of expectations pumped up for the last year, basically, since Jerome Tang got there, since this coaching staff's been there. I would ask you that same question. Obviously, it's a little bit different because we're further away from the season. But what would you say the ceiling is, or how far can this team go as it sits right now? And then I guess maybe touching on the transfer portal a little bit, is that something you expect activity down the stretch for the last 2 spots to help us get to that next level potentially?
Yeah, I think there's a case to be made that this team can have a reasonably similar ceiling to what they were last year. Because I think the case there would be, hey, Naquan Tomlin, and by the way, like everything that I've heard about Naquan Tomlin's offseason, particularly like the feedback that he heard from the NBA, was very good. That I think they were probably pleasantly surprised with what they heard back on that. I know we had Phil Byer on the other day on the 3 Mile podcast, strength coach of the program, is a great guy. But he mentioned like the feedback from the NBA was like, hey man, if he can bulk up to 220, which I think he needs to add like 10 to 13 pounds to do that. If he can really bulk up, it's kind of a no brainer. Like, this is a guy that could be taken in the first round of the NBA draft. And that really jives with a lot of the stuff that we heard. So if Tomlin really steps into becoming a top tier Big 12 player, and then Tyler Perry is the guy that he looked like that was very highly coveted in the transfer portal, like Alabama was definitely after, a lot of SEC programs as well. Then you've got a pretty good 1-2, and Arthur Kaluma is another very highly sought after player that a lot of people wanted. And you were able to grab both of those. So you could have a big 3 as opposed to a big 2. And then I think just the roster depth, again, talking about depth of talent on the roster depth should be a lot more talented with the freshmen that you're bringing in. You think about like the Bruce Weber years, bringing in a freshman class like that, those guys would have been the headliners and the ones drawing all the attention. But now in today's day and age with the portal and the class that they brought in the portal, they're being overlooked a little bit. But RJ Jones, Day-Day Ames, McCaleb Rich, like those guys are going to be a lot more talented than the guys that were playing in their spots last year. If you're just going down, like whatever number they're going to be in the rotation, whether that's 7, 8, 9, 6, 7, 8, whatever it might be, they're going to be more talented than what K-State had there last year. I do think there's a reasonable case for it. And we know like this staff is good. I am done doubting this staff. Like they find ways to pull it off. They're just too good. I'm legitimately convinced. I think this is a top 5 coaching staff, and I think Jerome Tang is a top 5 coach in college basketball right now. So they will find a way to get it done. Now, does that mean they're going to realize that full potential? Not necessarily. And to me, one of the biggest X factors is going to be Naquan Tomlin. Like, will he explode and become this like guy? Is the 3-point shot going to go down at a higher rate this year because all of a sudden he becomes a menace if he's shooting like 35% from 3? But that's a pretty big ask. So that's really what my kind of general analysis and take on this team. But if I were a K-State fan, I would be very optimistic that they could have the same type of ceiling that they did this past year. Think about what we were saying about this team at this time last year. And yes, I know Keontae Johnson is great, but hey, Kaluma and Perry are both pretty great too. And if we're talking about guys developing, they did a pretty good job developing Marquise Noel. So I think that shows you a track record to where they could get Naquan Tomlin to as well.
I think so too, 1,000%. One thing about that interview I was just blown away with was hearing Coach Byer talk about it. he had like 4 or 5 guys that he mentioned. He's like, yeah, this summer we got guys up 15 to 21 pounds and named, Taj Manning from last year, got guys like Cam Carter up another just weight class, I would say. I was blown away. That dude is incredible. So K-State's got a great one. Obviously him and True Carroll on the football side of things. That was a great interview. So quick props on that one. And jumping off of that, I will say you guys do awesome work on 3 Mall. You do some great work on your own channel as well. The live streams lately have been great. I'm curious, what's the next step for you? What's the next big thing you guys are focused on, whether it be KC Sports Network or be your own channel? Is there a next big thing of like, this is the type of content I want to hit real hard going forward? I was curious to see your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think, well, I would definitely tell you to stay tuned to 3 Mall. We're going to try and unveil a Patreon coming up here pretty soon, which would give you access to some extra content, maybe some merch. We're kind of workshopping a couple of things for those that are fans of Cole's son, Brody. I think we'll be involving him with like a weekly little check-in with Brody, who's becoming quite the internet sensation. So that is something to definitely look for. We'll be churning out a little more content there. There's also, I don't know how much I'm supposed to say about it. There will be another weekly show coming in the 3 Mall sphere that Cole is going to do with a former K-State player.
Awesome.
This guy that I used to have on the radio show quite a bit back in the day, if you were a fan of the game back in those days, who will be very good. So football season, you're going to be hit like 3 times a week at least, with some content there. So that will be very, very good. As far as the YouTube channel goes, I mean, it's just probably going to be more frequent live streams, because of all the conference realignment stuff that's going hot and heavy right now. And, we'll see this week. I'm going to try my best this week, but I'm headed off on vacation on Wednesday. So, poorly timed, I suppose, but it's hard to time anything anymore because every summer realignment goes off at some point and just screws with everybody's schedule. So, it's kind of a look on the peak of the horizon of what's coming up with 3 Mall and then the YouTube channel.
That's awesome to hear. And then last question, I think it's a good philosophy just to end interviews with something fun to sail off into the sunset on. I was just brainstorming the questions to ask you today, and this kind of popped into my head. If you had to rank the top 5, and you can take as much time as you need on this, the top 5 Johns, people with the first name John, whether it be John, Jon, or even Johnny, if you had to give me the first 5 that come to your mind, what would that list be?
Big John Mulaney fan.
Yep.
I do like John Mulaney. One of the funniest jokes that I think I've ever heard. I was playing it this week. It's in my head because I was playing it this weekend for a friend. But the joke where John Mulaney talks about being a kid at the jukebox in like a diner and playing What's New Pussycat by Tom Jones like 30 times go look it up. It is one of the funniest jokes that I've ever heard. So I would go John Mulaney. Oh,
and it doesn't have to be in any particular order either. It can just be 5 Johns.
This is no particular order because I'm about to look up like most famous Johns here to try and figure this out.
There's a lot.
Or like sports Johns.
Hey, whatever works.
I see John Krasinski pop up here. I mean, I am a fan of The Office, so I guess we can give John Krasinski some love. I'm laughing at some of the names here. Johnny Depp. We're considering Johnny Depp. No Johnny Depp. That's
no top 5 love for Johnny Depp.
No, I'm just laughing at this list here as it comes. Oh, here's John Oliver. I am a John Oliver fan. I like some John Oliver. John C. Reilly. Can I give you one who is not one of my top 5 Johns?
Yes, you can give me
conference realignment world right now, man. John Cantano would not make my top 5 Johns list.
No, he would. I'm not sure he'd make many people's right now, to be fair.
Yeah. John Wilder, I'm neutral on. I will give him a little bit of a pass there. Best John. Let's go best Johns in sports. Who are like some Johns? I feel like I should know more K-State Johns that I'm not coming up with right now.
There's a John that does I'm blanking on his last name right now. John Grove, I think, does a podcast. Give a shout out to John.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, have we not had John K-State athletes? Is that not a thing? I feel like we just have not had John.
If we're wrong on this, we're going to get destroyed in every comment section for this. Fair warning in advance.
Yeah, we absolutely are.
It's all right. We'll take it.
I mean,
I brainstormed 10 quick names as I was writing this down. If you want to hear my order.
Hit me because I need some inspiration here.
All right. So I had John Stamos making an appearance, first name that came to the mind. Full House. John Deere, going vague with it.
John Deere, yeah.
Yep, John Deere's a classic. John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt, only because his name was my name too. Then you got John Favreau, just tossed him in. He wasn't really cracking the top 10 of my books, but he's there. Johnny Cause, big shout out.
Ooh,
Johnny Cause.
yeah.
Johnny Cash, Man in Black, got to. I've got John Travolta, John Cena, John Legend, and John Bones Jones, rounding out my 10. Those are just my quick hitting Johns.
I'm seeing Johnny Knoxville here. I think I'll
Knoxville.
use that as my 4th. I did like some Jackass back in the day.
Yep.
I'm gonna have to come up with one more.
Put yourself at 5th.
I wish, let's see this. Yeah, well, listen, I gotta have a little bit of humility here. Best characters named John in history.
That's pretty good.
I feel like that's another route that I have not.
Yeah, the character route
Here. Oh yeah. Oh, John Rambo. I didn't know Rambo's first name was.
I'm not gonna lie. I thought Rambo's first name was Rambo, so it's probably better than I could have done.
Yeah. See, now I'm getting bombarded with like Jon Snow, and I'm not a.
Yeah.
I am not a. What is the show? Why am I blanking on the damn show?
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. There we go. I'm not a Game of Thrones guy. Oh, here we go. Long John Silver. We'll give the last to Long John Silver. Yeah.
I tell you what, you might be the only guy with Long John Silver's in your top 5, except for Long John Silver himself. But I appreciate you joining, and it's always great to talk to you. Thank you so much. Keep up all the great content, man. We appreciate it in both the K-State community and the Big 12 community. It's always an honor to talk to you, and I appreciate you guys all joining us today.
Absolutely.
Thanks, man.